Okay, welcome back to part 2. So, we talked about part 1 and the importance of using deed. Okay, we still need to maybe define some things in our second question and obviously explain and use examples and also potentially use diagrams. But because it's talking about evaluation, and B will always have evaluation, whatever word is used, whether it's discuss, evaluate, judge, it's always got evaluation marks. So this is where a lot of you need to improve on, especially those who are pushing to achieve 6s and 7s. Okay, and one way we can improve that is by using this acronym CLASP. So it stands for conclusion. Okay, conclusion. L stands for long-term or short-term. Is there long-term consequences and short-term consequences? Does this have an impact on how you evaluate, in this case, this policy? Okay, so in the short term it might cost a lot of money, and it might take a long while to take effect, but in the long term it might be well worthwhile. A is about assumptions. So is the theory that you're using got some limitations to it? Does it have some assumptions attached to it? So you might say, in theory, this should happen. However, in real life, it's going to be more complicated than this because of this, that, or the other. S, stakeholders. So does it impact all the stakeholders in the same way? What impact is it going to have on different stakeholders? So obviously, if the government's trying to increase consumption of education, it might have a consequence for the cost for students. It might have a consequence for taxpayers, for the government, and so on. Solutions. If there are disadvantages to something, maybe the government could reduce those disadvantages by doing something about it. Okay, so again, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but always think of different solutions. If this said evaluate the value of subsidies, okay, you need to maybe, part of evaluation is coming up with your own solution, as long as you can justify it and explain why you think it might work better than another one. Also, maybe adding an extra solution might make your chosen solution even better. So again, as long as you can justify it, that's good evaluation. And then finally, the most simple way is making sure that you highlight both the positives and the negatives, the pros and cons of, in this case, a policy. So make sure you do at least 2 or 3 of these things for your evaluation. Okay, right, let's dive in. So, one way that you could have talked about is maybe improve education, okay, at high school level. So tell people about the private benefits of consuming education. The fact that you're going to get a better job, you're going to be have a really good experience and life skills, and get them to do that at high school. And again, a diagram that can illustrate this very quickly is marginal private benefit, marginal social benefit, marginal social cost, costs plus benefits, and quantity. So again, what we're trying to do is increase consumption because it has these positive externalities. So we're going from QE over to Q social, okay? And what we're trying to do is, in this case with education, is try to actually increase the marginal private benefit. So remember, these are a bit like demand curves. So basically we're trying to increase how much education, so plus information. So the government's been on a big information drive, and it's pushed the private to people to realise that there's a high private benefit from university education. So it pushes that to the right, and now we're producing at Q1. So it's bridged some of the gap, but not all of it. So it's highly unlikely that we're going to go all the way to the social optimum and enjoy all of this welfare gain. So we've still got a little bit of welfare loss here that we're not benefiting from. So you could say, therefore, the government might need to do some other things as well to encourage consumption of university education. The second thing that they could do, and there's two ways we can illustrate this, is that they could introduce a subsidy. Okay. So make it cheaper for universities to provide education. So therefore making it cheaper for private individuals to go. So again, we need to define what we mean by subsidy first. And then, as I said, there's two ways we could explain this. First of all, we could do another externality diagram. So where we've got our marginal private benefit is lower than our marginal social benefit. And then we've got our marginal social cost. And then because we've been given a subsidy, it lowers the marginal social cost. So MSC plus sub. In this case we can see this is where we would ordinarily have produced QE. This is where we want to produce. Oh, not there, sorry. Over here, marginal social cost equals marginal social benefit, so the original place. Okay. And social. And because the marginal social cost plus subsidy lowers the cost, we're now actually consuming here. So Q1. So again, allowing us to enjoy much more of this external benefit. Okay, but still not quite all the way across. So there's still a little bit of welfare gain we could get, but we're still benefiting from all this extra that we weren't getting before. Okay, so that's one way you could illustrate the subsidy. Okay, and you could also, in order to evaluate how good a subsidy is, do the subsidy diagram. Gosh, that's a shocking straight line. Okay, so let me scrub that off. Okay, so you could do the subsidy diagram. So again, we start off with the supply here, okay, and then the government introduces a subsidy to universities, so supply of university places increases, so plus sub, okay, plus sub, and then we've got our demand down here, demand down there, and then so our original equilibrium point was here. So QE and P1, and then because of this we got a new equilibrium point and a new price for customers. Sorry, bear with me, the pen's playing up. So that's P customers, okay, and a new equilibrium quantity, Q1, and then we've got all of this represents a subsidy to the universities, and then we've got producer price up here, so hopefully that's going to appear in a second. So let me just do that again, producer price there, okay. And then all you need to do to get really good evaluation marks is describe what's going on in this diagram. Okay, so we need to label it, so we can do that effectively. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I. Okay, so just in this diagram, let me put the pointy pen on. Okay, so first of all, the consumers get a lower price, so the students are going to get a lower price. Okay, as we can see there, they get extra consumer surplus of F, E, and A. Okay, producers actually get a higher price because of the subsidy, so they get extra producer surplus of A, B. Okay, and although we have this external, this deadweight loss to society because no one's benefiting from this. So even though the consumers get lower price and producers get a higher price, none of them benefit from this amount of the subsidy, which obviously means that's inefficiency to society, that's lost to society forever. So that's a disadvantage for your valuation. Also, all of this area, A, B, C, D, E, F, okay, all this area represents a subsidy, so there's a cost to taxpayers, okay, which might be a disadvantage. So you need to highlight all these things as well. So some of the disadvantages of subsidies you need to explain in the diagram. Okay, that might impact. So it might impact the quality. Okay, so if you're supplying more, maybe there's going to be bigger classes. So the quality of university education is going to go down. Taxpayers are going to have to pay more, but students pay less. The government's going to have to supply all this subsidy. So if taxpayers don't pay more, there's going to be other things that are going to reduce in other areas. But the suppliers, the universities, benefit from this higher price, so they're happy. And then you could say, well, there's advantages and disadvantages to both of these points, and maybe highlight maybe other solutions that might work better. So, for example, you might say make it compulsory to go to university. Okay, so make a law that everyone has to go to the university. That's certainly going to improve the consumption of university, but the disadvantages are maybe people end up going to university and shouldn't be going to university, and it lowers the quality for everybody else. Maybe the government could give a free loan. So free loan. Okay. The advantage of this is it effectively makes university potentially cheaper for them, so they can afford it originally. But then once they can afford, so if they do actually benefit from the university education, they actually have to pay back that loan. If for some reason they never end up benefiting from the university education, they don't pay the loan back, which is very similar to the system in the UK at the moment, where you have to be earning a certain amount of money before you pay back your student loans. So there's lots of different ways you could have tackled this, but the important thing is to evaluate. So make sure that you're highlighting any long-term or short-term consequences. So back to this information, maybe in the short term it might not have much effect because some people may have already made their decisions, where in the longer term it might have more impact as aspirations of certain social groupings increase. Talking about different stakeholders, we did that here, talking about universities, talking about students, talking about the government, talking about taxpayers. We talked about all those different people. We also talked about pros and cons, and we also talked about different solutions that might work, and the consequences of maybe more people going might mean there's lower quality. Anyway, I hope that was useful. Enjoy that, and hope you enjoy the rest of the feedback.